Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
All right, this is a Halloween special episode for our audience.
Spooktacular
Episode.
Yes.
And we were pondering some questions that are sort of on theme for Halloween.
You should read some of the questions.
They were pretty good.
They are.
And our producer came up with them. That is his superpower, is the creativity side of all of this.
Let me just cut you off for a second and say, I have so much more fun recording these episodes. I mean, I have a lot of fun recording.
We got to do more of these.
Our guest episodes, but when it's just you and me and
just riffing.
Yeah, just riffing, and I don't feel bad for interrupting you and cutting you off. Like it is really fun for me, and I get kind of giddy. But go back to our producer creating some content.
No, we're going to do more of these because we I think over-index towards guest episodes, and I think people do like to hear our voice once in a while. Just you. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, but
that's a bold statement, Michael.
But yes, Jeremy is the creative brains behind the operation.
Yes,
and we are so thankful for all the work that he does.
Jeremy Balon and Seltzer Kings for everyone's.
SeltzerKings.com. If you were thinking about or have a podcast that you want to level up, go talk to him.
Yep.
But aside from that, we want to dive into at least one question related to the theme of Halloween that's coming up. And it is, what is some of the scariest things you faced in your second act? And I'll let you go first.
I thought it was the scariest things on the second act. And so I had this answer all teed up wrong.
Oh, interesting.
But let me tell you what my answer was going to be for.
Yeah. Let's go.
Scariest thing that I face on this podcast is actually when you bring on a guest, Michael. And it's interesting because for those listening, we just finished recording an episode with a phenomenal guest talking about imposter syndrome. But let me tell you, when you bring on some of these guests from the tech sector or from corporate world, an area that I haven't spent a lot of time in.
Yeah.
I have tremendous imposter syndrome. And
Get out of here.
Think to myself, what am I doing on this call? I don't know the questions to ask. And the questions I think about are stupid to me, or they're I think they're juvenile. And I think I'm not going to ask that question. That they're going to think I'm the biggest idiot in the room, which is usually the case. But I have incredible imposter syndrome facing some of your guests who are coming from very high sectors of the corporate world.
That is very interesting to hear you say that. And it just reminds me of many, many moons ago, my first tech job at a big, huge tech company. There was an executive who came to the office. I was very junior at the time, and she had sort of a town hall in the office. And I recall her saying something to the effect of, does anybody have any questions? And then nobody did because of, her position, and nobody wanted to upset the apple cart kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then she said, when I was younger, I was in a room full of executives like you guys are, and I had to think, do I want to ask this question or do I not want to ask this question? And I finally just said, I'm going to ask the question. I don't care how dumb it is, because somebody else in the room might be thinking that same thing, and you have the courage to ask it. And that other person, in her example, actually came up and thanked her for asking that question, because they were also thinking.
Very cool.
So never be afraid to ask a question. It doesn't matter what the answer is. Somebody out there is wondering the same thing.
Sure.
And with what you've accomplished in your life, John, I think it's somewhat ironic and funny that you're afraid to talk to some of the corporate business folks. It's because don't underplay what you've been able to do in your military career and now in your second act.
Well, I'm a year older than you in our second acts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you that question. In your second act, what has been the scariest thing in this last year?
The uncertainty of where it all goes is always sort of in my mind. But then I remind myself to just be open to anything and embrace wherever it goes, in whatever direction it goes. And having that mindset has really opened some interesting doors and built some interesting connections and led to some interesting conversations.
Okay.
But I heard something recently where when you're starting something new for the first time and it's unfamiliar, as human beings, we tend to overestimate the near term in
Yep.
terms of what we can accomplish and underestimate the long term
Yes.
of what we can accomplish. So I probably fell victim to that in terms of what could be accomplished in a year, although I'm proud of what we've accomplished in a year.
Sure.
And has there ever been moments where I'm like, yeah, this road's going to end and pivot into something else? Yes, absolutely. I have those thoughts, and I try to reconcile that and be okay with that. But like you mentioned, our guest, discussing quitting versus failing,
yeah,
and no plan B and all those interesting topics. I think as long as we don't stop, it doesn't matter how fast or slow we go.
Yeah.
Long term, looking back to what we started together it's hard not to sort of have a positive outlook and put a smile on my face with that.
When we were in that segment talking about quitting, failing, plan B, who do you think I was channeling for those quotes that were coming to mind? Come on.
With no plan B?
Well,
not Jordan.
And quitting and failing. No. Yeah, it was Jordan.
He doesn't quit.
Yes. I know he doesn't, but I mean, that's what I was trying to reference when I even said basketball.
Gotcha.
One of those favorite quotes is, I've never lost, right? The clock just ran out of time.
Right.
But I think he is quintessentially always changing the outlook of what failing looks like or losing looks like, right?
Yeah. But he says it does, and I only sort of understand this now much more so than I did when I was younger. Winning has a cost. And so when you are hyper-focused and committed to achieving a very specific goal, you need to understand the sacrifices of that. And in some
100%.
cases, there's some very big costs. And if you're okay with that, then keep going. But if you're not, that's when you can adjust things.
I mean, look no further than a Olympic athlete. We just had the Olympics a couple months ago. I mean, those individuals, those athletes are dedicating their whole life up to that point to that sport.
Yep.
Or that event. And it's over in seconds, milliseconds, and then it's like, now what? All that training, all that dedication came at a cost. They gave up something, life. They gave up time, friends, events, right? But people say, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be at that level. Or even just look at college athletes. I think to myself every Saturday when we're just sitting around watching college football, like, those kids have worked their whole life for these events. And we kind of, watch it from the sidelines with, I don't think, the full reverence that we should be giving it. But they're giving up things, time. Sure, they're gaining fame and potentially contracts and things like that. But you're right, comes at a cost.
Yeah,
comes at a cost.
Be aware of that dilemma as you go through life. And you can't the pendulum never sort of stops in the middle. It swings back and forth. So I'm looking over Jeremy's list here. So we talked about our scariest things. He's got another good one. Ghosting your self-doubt. Do you have any tips on ghosting your self-doubt in our new path? That's a good one.
I haven't looked at this list in a few weeks, and I forgot how funny Jeremy is. Maybe he used AI, I'm not sure, but
it's whatever, it doesn't matter.
Ghosting your self-doubts. He's wagging his finger no.
Yeah.
Man, when I looked at right when I got out of the Marine Corps and I started doing a couple other things, and I told my wife, hey, this is the direction I think I'm going to go. And she was like, you can't do that. You have no experience. And I said, well, they don't know that. I'm okay, saying I can do it. And it being my first time. They don't know, and I'll just have to perform, up to the level that of their expectations, which I think is overcoming, imposter syndrome of exactly what we talked about in the last segment was, well, how do I charge X for this service when I've never done it before? Well, you put a number out there, you see what that number produces, whether you're, if you get 20 people that sign up for that service right off the bat, that you way underpriced yourself and now you've got some work to do. Or if no one bites, then maybe you're a little bit too advantageous, but you adjust, right? But I think, let me go back to how I started this, is the self-doubt is just saying, no, this is the route I'm going down. I'm going to start. I'm going to become this. I mean, first day on the job, first client I ever talked to about buying a personal jet was, I had to step up and not think to myself, this is the first person I've ever talked to about selling and buying a jet. It was, no, I'm a jet salesman and a broker. This is what I do. This is who I am. These are the services we provide. And you step off. And it gets easier. And you do have to overcome several thoughts or the idea that they see right through you and they know. Well, overcome that with, hey, look at where I've come from, or the things I've done to get me to this point. You've never done that, and I'm talking to this person, like, I've come from a different background. Yeah, I've probably never sold a jet, or I've never done X, but I'm going to get better, and this is where I'm at now, so let's just go from there.
Yeah. I think in this thing that we're doing, for me, I started out with like, I don't like the sound of my voice. I don't know if anyone's going to listen to us. I don't know if we're going to have anything interesting to talk about. But then I got to I got to the point where I didn't care anymore. Like I was actually, if we like what we're making and we enjoy the community we're building and the conversations we're having and the points that are being made, that's what matters. Like it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. And there's going to be people on this earth of 8 billion people that somebody's probably going to like some of the things that are being talked about. And that, to me, is what keeps the journey going.
Love it.
Okay, John, we're going to wrap up this Halloween special episode. We're going to wrap up this Halloween Spooktacular episode with one last question.
Okay.
And it is, what is your scariest moment from your past life, your first act, if you will, in the Marine Corps, flying helicopters, in combat? Go.
Oh, man. I'm going to say my first flight picking up the president as the aircraft commander. So for those that aren't familiar, you have an aircraft commander and you have a co-pilot. Co-pilot in that world is really responsible for making radio calls and making sure the aircraft's performance is within check. You're not really doing a lot, to be honest, but you do that for a couple years and then you get selected to fly the president. And that very first flight, I remember it clear as day. I was coming into land on the South Lawn to pick him up and then go somewhere else. And smooth, beautiful day, no issues, but we came in, I landed, got set up to receive the president, and I started thinking, holy cow, I'm not ready for this. How did I get to this point and fool so many people? This is ridiculous. They truly have the wrong guy here, and I'm not going to be able to do this. And it was imposter syndrome. It was self-doubt. It was, just sheer concern and worry for what could happen. And I had to back out of that with, no. I've been flying helicopters for 15 years or 18 years at that point. I've been highly trained by amazing professionals and peers. I've gone through this system. I've met the checks. got all the checks in the block. I've studied, I've prepared, I've got a great co-pilot, I got a great crew. I'm ready for this. I've done this in my sleep, literally, and in the simulator and with an empty aircraft. I've done everything that I've needed to do. But I'll tell you, man, once that door opens and you start seeing the president walk out, it game changes. And it was that moment that I thought, oh man,
Butterflies in the stomach,
I've made
all
a
that good stuff.
huge mistake, huge mistake.
Yeah.
And it turned out great.
Yeah.
But when I got back, I asked other guys, hey, what was your first flight like with POTUS getting on board as a aircraft commander? And we all seemed to be able to explain the exact thing that each of us were feeling at that same time. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those situations. But
Nice.
it wasn't the shooting, combat. It wasn't landing in a dusty zone. They were picking up, 30 Marines and fly them around, although that's in itself scary as well. But it's just that, am I ready for this? And are people going to see through? Did I sneak through the cracks? And yeah.
Nice.
What about you? What is your scariest
Oof.
moment in the tech sector?
It's hard to compete with
No, it's
with
not.
what you just described. And I thought you were going to say something about bullets flying at you, but that's nothing. So I vividly recall one particular moment. So I've spent some time in sales functions at tech companies over the course of my career. And I vividly recall this one particular deal that was early in its cycle. I had had a couple of conversations, but I knew there was a conversation coming up about what they actually needed, and it was going to lead into pricing so that they could get that presented to their executive committee and budget approval on these sorts of things. And this was a very sizable deal for the company that I was at. So all eyes at all levels were on this deal.
Yeah.
And it felt like failure was not an option in this scenario. Usually there's more than one person on the call with the customer. One's listening, one's talking, and you're listening for or looking for cues and tidbits of information that signal things. But I decided to do it myself. And I remember sitting at the table, my computer, and having this conversation. And I started out with some of the basic pricing that's offered, but I somehow left it open for them to describe all the circumstances that they needed to use this product, which was really a platform for them to use in this particular use case. And after they shared all of that, I had to do some mental math really quickly and provide the actual pricing to them to verbally propose on their side.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was going to be like out of this world, crazy, stupid pricing, no way, or why are you guys so cheap? This is ridiculous. Is this really a legit company kind of thing? And it just happened to be within the bullseye, within the target of where it needed to be. And they presented that back, and that deal ultimately closed as the largest new business deal for that company in its
That's
history.
awesome.
And it gave me confidence in a number of different ways, but it was super scary at the time. And there's some other funny tangents from that actual deal cycle. But that was probably the scariest. And being in sales and that deal, I think, set me up to handle other circumstances in other roles with other senior stakeholders in the future. So it paid dividends at
awesome.
the time. But yeah, that's one I will take to the grave.
Love it. Spooky.
It
was a scary situation, but you worked your way out of it.
You just go for it. I tell my son that all the time. Most things are not life-threatening.
Yeah. Well, I think that met what we were looking for this Halloween.
It did.
3 scary stories
Spooky.
about growth in our second act or our first. Yeah. So this has been good. For all those that are listening, thank you so much for giving us your time, because I know it's valuable.
Yeah.
I know it is important, and we do not take it lightly that you would be able to share with us. If you have a story or a person that you want to hear on the show, let us know. Reach out to us on our website. You can find me and Michael on LinkedIn, and let us know what we're missing or who we could bring onto the show that you'd like to hear from.
Absolutely. Yep. And check us out, michaelandjohn.com, or the Second Act Movement on all the social channels. You will find us, Second Act Movement.
Great.
Till next time.
See ya.
See ya.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.